Hello everyone. I wanted to do a live video here and read to you the very first chapter of my new Noble Right Fantasy serialized novel that I am publishing on my blog for free for everyone to have access to. I will be publishing a new episode every week so that you will be able to get a new part of the story every single week. You are going to be able to follow the story. Steam-powered vigilantes, elemental powers, an alliance that could save them all. An only child born without elemental abilities, Sihara always expected to be the end of her family's lineage. Now her father has the chance to secure an end to a century of war against a ruthless Animalian empire, with an alliance to a neighboring country. Sihara just has to marry Sebastien, a highborn merchant with a complicated history, to keep her house from going extinct. Jaden lives a double life, as the rich and charming son of the Lord Ambassador and the leader of a steam-powered secret society of vigilantes. When he uncovers evidence that threatens the very foundation of the Alliance, Jaden and Sihara must work together to defeat the traitors before they destroy the alliance between their countries. Meanwhile, deep in the inhospitable outlands, Milo, an innocent animal in exile, must steal back his powerful artifact from a bandit who seeks to use it for evil. When an unlikely band of misfits join his quest, he must overcome his fears to save his new friends and stop the mad bandit king. Some of you have asked me, what is serialized fiction and what is Noble Bright? So I wanted to answer those questions before we start on chapter 1. So Noble Bright is the opposite of the more commonly known grim dark genre, which is all about grim and tragedy and dark stories. Noble Bright is the opposite. It has at least one important character with noble, idealistic motives who does the right thing out of principle. The character may be flawed, but his or her actions are genuinely defined by honesty, integrity, sacrifice, love, and kindness. The story upholds the goodness of the character. The character's good qualities are not held up as naive, clueless, or stupid, but rather shown to be worthwhile. Good characters can make a difference. Noble Bright characters can learn and grow. They can deliberately choose to be kind when tempted to be unkind. They can choose generosity when it hurts, and they can influence their world and the characters for the better. In a Noble Bright story, even villains are not without hope. Their stories may have a redemptive ending. It's not guaranteed, of course, but in a Noble Bright story, it's a possibility. Noble Bright fantasy is not utopian fiction. It's not perfect world and can have dark moments. Actions have consequences, and even good characters can make terrible mistakes. But a Noble Bright story is generally hopeful in its tone, because in a world where plenty of bad and dark things are going on, we need stories that uphold the light and goodness of the world. So what about a serialized story? Well, if you are familiar with Charles Dickens, his stories were serials. They are a publishing format which a single larger work, like a novel, is published in smaller sequential installments. So they would be publishing just like a chapter or a scene, similar to how Isaac Asimov published the whole Foundation series as a series of short stories broken up into small episodes. So you get a little bit of the story each week, about 2,000 to 3,000 words every week, and you get to follow along with the adventure as I am publishing this. You guys are getting a peek behind the curtain. This is before it's sent to the editor, so you guys are going to be able to follow along with my publishing journey. If you have a teen or a tween who really enjoys Avatar: The Last Airbender, especially the sequel Legend of Korra, Legend of Zelda, or the Redwall series, they are really going to love Shadows of the Ambassdorial Halls. I focus on writing clean fiction, so that means that nothing is going to be graphic. There's not going to be violence or swearing or anything like that in this book. So you can be rest assured that it is a clean and wholesome book with plenty of adventure and action thrown in. So if you are joining me live, please go ahead and post a comment letting me know where you are joining us from and who I have joining us. If you are joining in on the replay, go ahead and post a comment about that as well. I'd love to see you guys, and I'm going to be continuing to check the comments on a regular basis. Today, I did my launch party, and for those of you who are not familiar about what a launch party is, I basically invite a bunch of really awesome authors to come and help me celebrate by sharing about their books and doing fun games and giveaways, and we had a blast today. There are a bunch of posts that you're able to participate in. Still, the authors are available to continue to reply to each of the people, and the giveaways are still open till the end of the day. So I will also post a link to where you can get to all those really fun posts and enter in those really awesome giveaways. We have people giving away books and physical books, bookmarks, all kinds of really fun stuff. I just went ahead and mentioned everyone here so that we can just make sure everyone's able to see. And I'm going to post the link to the chapter that we're going to read so you guys can read along with us. Okay, and here is the link to the launch party as well. Okay, it looks like we are ready to begin. Where in the world did I put my shoes? Sarah searched her cozy window reading nook and found a few empty teacups and abandoned novels, but no shoes. The twin moons of peace poured purple moonlight into her room. "We are late," Sebastian's muffled voice called from behind her door. "Pressuring me will not make my shoes appear any faster." The most important event of the century would start without them if she didn't find her only pair of red shoes. Sarah had auctioned off so much for things to raise funds for the war. She didn't have another pair of red shoes, and she didn't have time to change into another dress. She wouldn't risk a scandal by wearing mismatched shoes. "Ishi, why can't you put them where they belong?" Sebastian made an exasperated noise, somewhere between a sigh and a groan. "At least have your lady-in-waiting help you." She hated it when he used the goddess's name in vain. "I already let Noelle go to the festival, so unless you want to come in here and help me, you're going to have to be patient." Sierra knew that her guardian, Nichole, wouldn't let Sebastian into her room, even if he was her fiancé. She tucked a stray piece of dark hair behind her ear. Her elaborate updo wasn't as tidy as the other highborn. She had inherited her mother's curly southern elementary hair. It just wouldn't stay put, no matter how many pins she put in it. "When I came back from the party last night, did I read on my bed or by my desk? Did I get a cup of tea first?" She moved around the tall stacks of journals, diaries, and chronicles with practiced ease. Her fondness for the old court languages had taken over the room. At last, Sahara found her shoes and a telltale teacup sitting on the side table in a forgotten corner. Aha! Slipping her shoes on, Sarah bounded for the door. The ancient builders of the ambassadorial halls had decorated the corridor with a mosaic of granite, shells, and polished stone depicting scenes of peace and prosperity. Sebastian looked fit to burst, but one glance at her imposing guardian Nichole calmed him. "You're beautiful, as always." Sebastian offered his arm to her as any gentleman would, but the gesture felt more possessive than courteous. "But we're nearly 15 minutes late." "Being obsessed about time is not healthy. Dr. Quinto said the stress could lead you to an early grave." The last thing Sahara needed was a fiancé whose ambition drove him into the ground before their wedding. Nichole followed them at a discreet distance, silent as a Nimir on the prowl. A mineralite approached them from around the corner. The man's faded garb spoke of his long days in the sun, and his soot-smeared face spoke plainly that his occupation was that of a steam carriage driver. As the mineralites progressed technologically, horse-drawn carriages had become a thing of the past. "Ah, the stable-master sent me to fetch you. Mineral has provided a carriage to escort you to the festival. Now, if you will follow me." Sebastian whispered. "No one, certainly no mineralite, would have been sent if we had been ready at the appointed time. Creator help her. Sebastian would strain her patience tonight. But there's no law forbidding his presence here." Sebastian grumbled something about priorities under his breath. I can't wait for the Elementi people to rise up and demand better treatment from you highborn. In Mineral, we got better wages and less spending on ostentatious things like this. The Mineralite gestured to the beautiful hall around them. Sebastian interrupted. You would do well to keep your opinions to yourself, driver, since neither the Taja nor I care much about your views. Am I the only one trained in diplomacy? Sarah shot Sebastian a look. Actually, I appreciate your candor. We've seen the benefit of reforms you are implementing in your country. The driver raised an eyebrow. Real. Don't encourage him, Sebastian groaned. Sarah ignored him. The Elementi Council has appointed worker representatives so we can hear directly from the people. The driver laughed. What an Elementi way of thinking. Rather than give up your glittering halls, you raise up a few choice people to keep the rest in line, the hope that they too will get their turn. Sarah frowned. That's not... Sebastian squeezed her arm. You better leave the diplomacy to the Taj. Sahara would do nothing of the sort, but she would be more discreet. When was the last time I spoke freely with a Mineralite who wasn't a part of the Lord Ambassador's family or staff? A year? 2? In the open air of the stables, the frosty fall night spoke of an even more frigid winter. Sarah gasped at the sight of the Mineralite steam carriage. Bronze lace formed the outer shell, and underneath, a thin sheet of crystal allowed the onlooker to peer into the inner workings of the machine, while also keeping sand and small stones from clogging the gears. The driver patted his prized carriage. Such meticulous attention to detail is the sign of a mastered Mineralite blacksmith. I pity any Elementi who dares compare himself. Forget the scenic route, and I might forgive your blunders. Sebastian tossed a pouch of shills at the surprised driver. Get us to the Twin Moon Festival in 21 minutes, and I will pay you double its amount. Yes, Sihar. Oh, now he's calling people by their title. As with most people, the driver's disdain evaporated as soon as he got his hands on the money. Michele took a seat next to the driver, vigilant for any trouble. Sebastian offered his hand to help Sahara into the carriage. Now we will be perfectly on time. Sarah leveled him with a glare and helped herself inside. So maybe someone's notices we're late. Is it worth all the stress and rushing about? Do you have any... Just because the Animalians have not set their sights on the ambassadorial halls does not mean they will not try. Sarah let her gaze drift towards the window. How many times have we argued about this? Sebastian grumbled. The war is a matter for the commoners and the military to worry about. Regardless of your opinions on our current situation, I worry about your health. If she didn't get married before her upcoming birthday, her family would lose everything, and her uncle would become the ambassador. The same uncle who vowed to stop the alliance with the Mineralites after his daughter's death. And I worry about you. I'm always available to escort you to the market and such, with my responsibilities as they are. Once we're married, you will be guarded by a full troop of guards at all times. I will not risk losing you like I lost my late wife. Sebastian's voice faltered for a moment. Sarah softened. I know you loved her very much. My cousin was like a sister to me. However, she died 10 years ago, and times have changed. You are worried about the Animalians. I thought you would appreciate the additional protection. Sebastian picked imaginary dust off his suit. A dark mood had settled over the cab of the steam carriage. The military has spared what few men they can to guard the ambassadorial halls. There's no reason to burden me with any even more frivolous guards when they should be out there fighting the Animalians. You will be safe in these troubling times. I've given you my word. Even if you have to lock me in a tower and send a dragon to guard me? The words came out sharp. A dragon. The glimmer of mischief in his blue eyes matched his telling smirk. Don't tempt me. Even Sahara had to laugh. She could always picture it now, Sebastian leading a dragon by a leash. Have I ever told you your laugh is like music to my ears? Sebastian asked. Why, yes, you have. Sarah's eyes darted away from Sebastian. His compliments would be more flattering if they weren't so cliché and often repeated. Her lack of elemental abilities made her an undesirable wife. Sebastian could somehow overlook the fact their children may not have an elemental ability like her. She kept his reasons to himself, a habit which Sahara wished she could help him break. Don't do that, Sebastien said, gripping his seat as a sharp turn almost toppled the carriage. Don't do what? Sihara worried they would crash if the driver did not slow. They made the steam carriage to travel over paved roads. This dirt trail was better suited to her water buffalo's steady stride. Do not look at the ground. I cannot see your charming face, Sebastien winked. How did she fall for that one again? Oh, stop it. But why? Sebastien reached across the space dividing them and grasped her bare hand. You're making me blush. Sihara fought the urge to pull her hand away from his gloved grip. He always seemed to have an imperative grip upon her shoulder, her hand, or her arm. Perhaps that's my intention, Sebastien grinned. He cut a handsome figure in the shadows of the carriage, with his dark hair and his pale skin, several shades lighter than her own. Sebastien! Sihara wanted to scold him, but the rest of the words caught in her throat when he rubbed small circles in the back of her hand. Even in the privacy of the carriage, the intimate gesture made her uncomfortable. She pulled her hand away. So, what are you looking forward to the most at the festival? It will be my first time watching the Circus of the Rising Sun. Sebastien frowned at a rebuff. I don't know if I can choose between the eclectic little shops or the fine art exhibits. Although I recently purchased a new table which gives you a sculpture, a vase, perhaps the shops. The carriage cleared the trees, and the dance of the fiery and aquatic moons became visible through the windows. The appearance of both moons is not a sight most will live to see twice. Sihara wished she could explain how the sight made her feel. It was as if someone had opened her eyes to the great chasm above her head. The sky opened like the mouth of a giant, showing its teeth in the form of the moons. One tiny bite, and the universe would swallow her whole. How big could her problems be in the grand scheme of the universe? She was just a tiny speck on the surface of the planet, with a thin skin of atmosphere, a blood cell in the body of the planet who danced in the heavenly court of the Creator. They rounded the bend in the dirt road, and all at once, the Twin Moon Festival revealed its splendor. Paper lanterns drifted delicately through the air, representing every color of the spectrum. Everyone wore their best clothes, each trying to outdress the other. Along the main street, vendors, artists, and musicians had set up shop. Candlelight flickered inside the brightly colored elementary tents, reminding Sihara of the puppet shows that had entertained her in her youth. The brick-and-mortar mineral light shops must have been built days before the festival. Their artificial lights shone like beacons in the night. What delightful treasures would she find inside? The screech of the brakes ruined the moment. Okay, is everyone ready for part 2? Sihara held onto the quilted fabric of the carriage and whispered a prayer as they skidded to a halt. Nichole opened the carriage door and stood to the side, ready to defend them if the need arose. Sebastien retrieved his hat from his seat and set it atop his head with swift, practiced motion. Fall leaves covered the ground and made a satisfying crunch underneath her feet. With the loss of their leaves, the trees were like skeletons compared to their former green selves. The driver rubbed his hands together. I got here as fast as the machine could go. Sebastien checked his time stone and grimaced. You took 23 minutes to travel to the Twin Moon Festival. I'm still 2 minutes behind schedule. Sihara could not believe his audacity. Oh, by the moons, just pay the man. He risked all our lives getting us here a few minutes faster. Sebastien grumbled. It didn't escape her notice that he shorted the driver a few shills. Sihara gritted her teeth, resolved to enjoy herself regardless of his behavior. Musicians played 10 different tunes, each trying to outdo the other. A million voices melded into one, hissing and roaring like the ocean with its ebb and flow. She pulled Sebastien along, gushing over at the art displayed in every form imaginable. Stories from fantasy and reality alike adorned earthenware vessels. In their startling lifelike mimicry, the clay sculptures were equally impressive as the tapestries woven with the most precious thread in all the countries. From the corner of her eye, she saw Sebastien had relaxed. We can get along. We just still need something to enjoy together. One of Master Artisan Griot's sculptures captivated her. He had captured the happiness and freedom of a small sparrow in mid-flight, painted in bright colors that inspired a sense of whimsy. What do you think of this one, Sihara? Isn't it striking? Sebastien held an earthenware vessel painted with the image of the goddess of life and death, locked in battle over the souls of the world. How morbid, Sihara thought, hard for diplomatic response. I suppose it would go nicely with your map of the Outlands. Sebastien frowned and motioned to the other art pieces. Which one would you choose? She smiled and pointed to the sparrow. I know you don't like Griot, but even you must admit, this one's fantastic. If you want to see a flying bird, you can look at the window. Sebastien shook his head, and not have your eyes assaulted by those colors. Perhaps we'll find something we both like in some other art display. Sihara tried to sound optimistic, but she doubted they would agree on anything. Children laughed and shouted as they ran through the tent, bare feet slapping against the packed dirt. One boy was so absorbed in his sparkling stick that he collided with her. "Oh!" She smiled and turned the boy around. Sebastien hissed. "Watch where you're going, boy." The boy stuck his tongue out at Sebastien. "My father says I do not have to listen to you, Elementy." Sebastien shot him a sour expression, and the boy laughed and ran to join his friends. Sarah shook her head, not sure if she should scold Sebastien or the boy. First the driver, now the boy. I worry my father may have underestimated how difficult it will be for the Mineralites to agree to the alliance. Oh, let's leave such worries for the Ambassdorial halls and focus on enjoying ourselves at this wondrous festival. Sebastien glanced at his time stone. We should head to the circus. I want to be one of the first few to enter. The big orange tent at the end of the main street was hard to miss. Inside, flowery perfume undercut the faint smell of stale confections. A semicircle of benches served for seating. Candles provided a little light amongst the seats, and the bonfire which warmed the center of the tent provided the rest. Sarah excused both of them multiple times as they made their way past the row of seated highborns toward their assigned seat. "Taja, Sihara, I'm glad to see you can make it in time. I almost thought you weren't coming." Kemdara, Lucia, Kira greeted Sarah as soon as she sat down beside her. Now, dear, I'm sure those two lovebirds have a perfectly good reason to be late. Sure you remember our engagement." Worker Representative Raphael tipped his wide-brimmed hat with a mischievous smile. His dark flowing locks were more common in the Etanian Republic of Elementi. Sebastien rolled his eyes. Sarah's cheeks grew hot, thankful her complexion hid her blush. "It's good to see you again, Kemdara. And you too, Raphael. It has been too long since you visited the Ambassdorial halls." "Too long indeed. I have been busy keeping the Elementi Highborn responsible." Raphael shot Sebastien a look. Sebastien glared right back at him until Sarah nudged him in the ribs. "I even want to know what that was about," she thought. The two men were from the same republic. It always seemed as though Raphael were privy to things in Sebastien's past he had wished to keep hidden. "Men, women, and children from every country." The ringmaster wore a billowing white shirt and dark pants. Glittering elemental dust sprang from his fingertips. With a flick of his wrist, the dust whirled around the audience and snuffed out the candles before returning to his hands. The crowd hushed in the darkened tent. The air magic left behind a tingling sensation. Sarah reached inward for her own elemental magic, but only found the familiar emptiness where her magic should be. A cloud of glowing orange elemental dust lit the figure of a young fire-controlling acrobat. Wait, where's the net? The acrobat glided through the air with the elemental dust following him like a comet trail. His fingers slipped and he plummeted through the air. Sarah gasped and gripped Sebastien's arm. The acrobat landed on an unseen platform. The platform held a giant glass lens, and enough kindling set the whole tent ablaze if they weren't careful. He positioned the lenses to focus the light of the fire to spotlight the ringmaster. The ringmaster wore a new outfit with heavily embroidered red coat and a cocky grin to match. "Welcome to the traveling circus of the rising sun." I hope you all enjoyed Chapter 1 of Shadows of the Ambassadorial Halls. There are currently 5.5 chapters available for you to read now, and new chapters release every Monday. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, if you want to keep up with the adventure, go ahead and sign up for my newsletter. I have 2 stories that you can read that are short stories that you can read available for free, and they are a little bit of an insight into some of the other parts of the story. So we have Madman's Automatons, which is actually a novelette. It's about 9,000 words. Deep in the Mineralite kingdom, opera-loving mad scientist Nicholas and his sister Henrietta must go up against a dastardly count who wants to use the automatons for his own personal gain. And I also have The Assassin. It's a short story set in the kingdom of Mineralia. So go ahead and check that story out. Both of those are available free, and I'm going to drop the link to sign up for the newsletter to be able to get both of those stories. Thank you again for joining me, and I hope that you enjoyed these stories.